Yo, it's me, DDP, and you're watching Count It Out with my boys, Mike and Tyler. Stay tuned and feel the bang.
You are listening to Count It Out with Mike and Tyler.
Well, we are live, pals, and welcome back to part two of my favorite show of the year. It is the Count It Out with Mike and Tyler, sealed and approved by Bill Apter, of course, year-end show, part two. What a amazing week we
Can we
had last week.
can we top last week? I'm not sure. Let's
We're gonna
let's
try our
try. Let's
best. We're gonna
try.
try our best. Leave some feedback. Let me know how you feel about everything so far with my list. Let us know what you think of the great guests that we've had. And I don't think we should waste any time, Mike. Like, I'm pumped up. I want to get
Let's
right back into things here.
let's go.
All right. Well, without further ado, we're gonna jump right back into our best of the year 2024. It is time for another one of our choices for the year-end awards. This time we are going with the female performer of the year. I have a feeling that this is going to be very quick and
There's no way you and I are disagreeing here to the point where I'm even going to count down from three, and we're going to say it at the same time because we've been talking. We don't know what each other picked, but we've been talking about this person all year long. There's no way we picked a different person. I'm going to go three, two, one.
Tony
Tony
Storm.
Storm.
Yes, absolutely. Timeless Tony Storm. You know, fantastic character work this year, fantastic in-ring stuff. I could listen to Tony Storm talk forever. In fact, I did.
Yeah,
I don't ever watch those virtual signing things because I think
yeah.
they get, whatever.
Neither do I. They're boring.
Tony Storm did one, and I
Yeah.
listened to the whole thing. It was like 3 hours long, and it was absolutely hilarious. She cut this promo earlier in the year in Japan where she talked about having a love affair with
With
Stan Hansen.
Stan Hansen, yeah.
Oh my God. Like, and then you get into the program with Mariah May,
Hmm.
which it was just amazing stuff. And now we see the rebirth of rock and roll Tony Storm there, and a very interesting twist to this character. They're doing kind of like an amnesia thing.
Hmm.
And yeah, I just think that was hands down a pretty easy one.
Agreed, 100%.
All right. Well, I mean, like I said, this one was going to be quick and simple and to the point. But yeah, Timeless Tony Storm, without question, the female performer of the year. The number three moment of the year is Sting's last match. And here to speak about that is former WCW ring announcer and former TNA ring announcer, David Penzer. AEW putting on Sting's final match, Greensboro Coliseum. What was it like to work with such an icon like Sting back in the WCW days? And how did you think that his final match whole spectacle went?
First of all, if I'm being honest, I tried to get in on that.
Oh yeah?
I was done with Impact, and I called Shivani, and then talked to Chris Jericho too. He lives right around down the road from me, and they all both thought it was a great idea. And Tony Khan really wanted to stick with Justin because he's a Justin guy, and Justin was, and I have total respect for that. And there's no anger or frustration or disappointment. I just threw my head in my hat in the race and uh, thought about it and decided to go with what he did, and I think it worked. And one of the reasons was it was a tag team match with in-ring intros, so it's like at that point I'm introducing the Young Bucks and Darby Allin, and it just becomes awkward. If it was just Sting against one other person and I could go in there and introduce Sting, I think that would have been a really cool experience. But the whole presentation, the whole kind of match it was, and how it was, the intros were presented were tough. And so I think ultimately Tony made the right decision. Although I would have loved to have been a part of it. Sting is awesome, great guy. Never got too big for his britches. Always with a smile on his face. Most of the time when I had seen him, everybody has their moments. Uh, but but yeah, great guy, great career. I thought the match presentation of of the intros with him in the cinema and all that was absolutely unbelievable. Kudos, whoever did that, great stuff. I'll be honest with you, not a big fan of Glass.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of lost me on that. They kind of lost me on the Glass. Don't need it. He's an icon. He's his last match ever. You don't need it. He didn't need it. If that's what he wanted, then that's his decision. That's his legacy. I'm glad his kids got to be involved. That was super cool. I'm not, all due respect to my buddy Brett Lauderdale, table chairs, thumbtacks, yeah, that's okay. But when we start getting to glass and light bulbs and stuff, you just lose me. That's me. I've had this discussion with many people on Twitter and in dressing rooms, and Masha Slamovich and I used to argue about this back in fact, because she's really into that whole thing. And look, I respect her, and especially what she puts her body through. And I respect, I respect that genre. It's just not for me. It's just not something I don't want to see light bulbs in a wrestling show as broken glass. So you're just getting to places where you got a huge chance of really getting screwed up or screwing your opponent up or the referee, and it's just not my thing. So I thought the presentation for Sting with his sons out there and the intro, the cinema and all that was super cool. As far as the match goes, like I said, I didn't turn it off when the glass came out, but it just kind of took a little of the excitement for me out of watching the way it went down.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one too. Like if that's your guys' thing, then that's your guys' thing, and I respect it. But I'm with you. It's not my favorite thing to see. Especially now that I've started ring announcing on the independent level, like I get worried watching the guys out there now, and I be like, the more I become friends with the people in the dressing room, like I don't want to see them take these big crazy bumps because I care about their safety.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I have like 7,500 followers on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter at David Penzer. But every once in a while I'll put something up and it'll get some traction. And the one that got the most traction, because wrestlers were starting to retweet it, was somebody put a picture at WrestleMania of I guess they would use wooden or fiberglass ladders, and they paint them to look like steel ladders.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody put a picture and they were like, "Oh, these guys are a bunch of lame asses." I simply wrote back, if it's better for the guy's health and well-being, who gives a shit? Who gives a
Absolutely.
crap? I don't care. The whole wrestling business is deception and illusions, and that's the whole business. It's not like, it's like everything's on the up and up except for the ladder is painted. And I think at one point it had almost 1 million views. Now I don't know what entails a view on Twitter, but it was probably the most viral thing I ever sent out. It was just something so simple. I mean, those guys have families, and they're going to get older, and they're going to. I've seen it. I've seen guys like Harley Race pay the price, and so many people, now that I grew up watching and got to know in the business, and now they're paying a price for the bumps and the bruises and the chair shots to the head and that kind of stuff. And man, this is unfortunately or fortunately, whatever your opinion is, now we know this is all a work. Uh, the matches are predetermined, but it doesn't mean that they don't go out of their way and do things that would hurt a mere mortal. Maybe kill a mere mortal sometimes with the chairs and all that kind of stuff. But we all know now that it's predetermined and all that. So who cares if it's a wooden chair painted like a metal chair? I mean, it almost seems apropos.
This one, I think, is going to be one of the hardest topics to do for me
You think so?
personally.
Okay.
We're going to talk about the match of the year because what a year in professional wrestling it has been.
100%. You're not wrong, but this is one of the easier ones for me.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna let you bang out the match of the year first.
Since I saw this match, I remember saying to myself, it's going to take a lot to beat this match for me, and nothing has. I'm going back a few months, October. Yeah, I think October. We're going to Hell in the Cell, CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre.
Yeah.
This match for me had everything that I love about professional wrestling all encompassed into this 30 minutes. There's this is basically one of the only flawless matches of the year for me. Um, let me get, don't get me wrong, this is a great year for wrestling. We have a lot of amazing matches in all the major companies. Okay. AEW, as much as I bitch about them, they were spot on with their in-ring stuff this
Oh
year.
yeah, just look at
Um,
Dragon, right?
TNA had some phenomenal stuff in ring this year. WWE was on point with the stuff that I love as a wrestling fan. They had everything from the in ring to the entertainment to the storytelling, all encompassed properly and purposefully in this Hell in a Cell match. CM Punk, you know that I was never a big CM Punk fan.
He's hitting
This
home
new
runs.
this run right now has made me into a Punk fan.
Yeah,
His match, his feud with Drew McIntyre was one of my favorite feuds of the year.
absolutely.
This is hands down my match of the year.
Hard to argue. It definitely came very, very close to being my match of the year as well. I also put some consideration into a lot of American Dragon stuff this year for match of the
Mhm.
year. Him and Osprey had a great match earlier this year. Him and Swerve Strickland had a
I
great
assumed him and
match.
Strickland would be your match of the year.
And I also put some consideration into the men's war game match this year because I do
Okay.
love me some war games. But I am also not going to shy away from what I think a lot of people have as their match of the year, and I'm going to go back to WrestleMania with Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns. Um,
It's funny. I just rewatched it a couple days ago. My son has been asking me about Cody Rhodes. He's never really watched any Cody Rhodes, and he's curious. So I showed him that match, and he's a Cody Rhodes fan now. I'll tell you
absolutely.
that.
How can you not
And
be?
exactly, the entrance alone captivated him.
Yeah.
And I forgot until rewatching the match how good that match is.
And
Uh,
then you take away like all like the extracurricular activities out of it. The actual match itself before all the fun starts
yeah,
is a really great match. And
agreed.
I just think that this is one of the best moments in professional wrestling history. I think we're gonna always look back to that main event of that night of WrestleMania and just it's gonna be like a moment, you know?
You can't watch that match and not feel a little bit sad that Samantha Irvin has left the company.
Yeah, I mean she was a great part in adding to
Yeah,
that, but I mean just the whole spectacle and Cody really deserved that moment. Like we
100%.
see a lot of moments in wrestling that are, they're still genuine, but they've been manufactured or they've been kind of forced a little bit, or they're just like kind of like it's not really sincere, but they're trying to make it sincere. This man left the company as Stardust, rebranded his entire persona as the American Nightmare, and started a brand new company. Was a big reason why a whole new company got started, and then
Yep.
returned to the WWE and main evented two WrestleManias in a row and won the world championship. Like you can't help but cheer for the guy.
9 months later, rewatching that match, how do you feel now with the Undertaker spot?
I wish it was Austin, but I'm fine with it being Taker.
So your view on it really hasn't changed in 9 months?
No,
No,
no. I
mine
mean
either.
Taker was the next best choice.
Yeah,
Who
right.
else do you put in that spot if it's not Austin and Taker,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
All right, well, that's our match of the year. Let's continue on with our countdown. The number two moment of the year is the feud of the bloodline. And joining us for that is Wae Ting from Post Wrestling. Joining us now is somebody that I have a tremendous amount of respect for, somebody that I look up to, and I think I can speak on behalf of Mike as well. I look up to very
Absolutely.
much. Without this man and his partner John, there would be no Counted Out. We are talking to Post Wrestling's Wae Ting. Wae, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for such a flattering introduction. I mean, as I was kind of speaking off air, I mean, I really often feel like I'm still very much getting started myself, so I don't see. I mean, I think what you guys have accomplished is very impressive too. Anybody who commits to this for at this point years, I think is very impressive.
Hmm.
Yeah, we're coming on to our fifth year, just about 250 episodes, and
Amazing.
the groundwork that John, and Colt Cabana are the first people I think of when I think of wrestling podcasts because you
Wow.
guys were kind of doing like review away at the end of like the Law back in the day, and that's when
Yeah.
Cabana was kind of coming, and that's where I found Way. I'd known John for a while through, with Dan the Mouth and Jason Agnew and that crew of people. I grew up with the Law, which I think a lot of us here in Ontario did,
Yep.
Mhm.
and just seeing two guys that were so laid back and normal, and be like, man, like this is something I'd love to do one day, and you were very gracious before we started our podcast. I don't know if even you'll remember this, but I sent you a message and I just said, "Hey, I'm thinking about starting a podcast. Do you have any recommendations?" And you gave me some great advice on equipment, and so we just always appreciate you taking the time.
Awesome.
And we had such a great time with you a couple years ago on the show. We figured we'd bring you back and talk a little wrestling with you.
I appreciate the invite. It's actually, I mean, beyond just even professional wrestling, like this sort of content creation and podcasting is a real passion of mine. So I was more than happy to just even have a conversation about that and to like give you what little information I know. So yeah, awesome.
Well,
Wow.
it's going to be a fun time, but before we get into some of the big moments of the year, let's talk about post wrestling and just the incredible team that you guys have over there. What are some things that people can look forward to that you guys have going on as we roll into the new year?
It's interesting to say because we've been going on, I think at this point, for man, we started in December of 2017, so 7 years. We're in our seventh year. And when we started, even like in this incarnation of what we do, which is post wrestling, um, I feel like there was a lot less to cover, like at that point in time, I think our schedule was Raw, it was SmackDown. And that allowed a lot more space for like extra coverage. Like we do a retro review podcast, we do New Japan, we do all this stuff. Ever since AEW came around, and ever since like, for instance, like WWE started doing way more programming recently. It just feels like it's our job has been taken over just by covering like the mainline programming, A programming. So nonetheless, we still feel a very real commitment to doing things like the retro reviews and like, having New Japan coverage and having like extra coverage of like Dark Side of the Ring, things like that.
Mm.
So for all of that stuff, we now put or we've always continued to add value to our Patreon, which is the Post Wrestling Cafe. So we will be continuing to do that while on our free feeds, giving enough coverage for our Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown reviews, which are, yeah, at this point, every other day.
Absolutely. And for the people that are interested, where can they find the Patreon and how can they sign up for it?
Yeah, it's so postwrestling.com is where you can find all the stuff. Like really, if you want to just subscribe to the free feed, we're very grateful. And again, you'll get your Raw, Dynamite, and in the new year, SmackDown reviews now on the free feed. So you can just look for that on your favorite podcast app. But if you really like us, if you're somebody who has sampled our stuff and feels like, okay, I could actually use a bit more of these guys, postwrestlingcafe.com is where you can support us and get a ton of bonus content.
Awesome. Mike, you wanna start us off here with a little bit of the wrestling talk?
Well, I think the best place to start is what I consider, I don't know what you're saying, but I consider to be the best storyline of the year. Let's start off with the Bloodline.
Mhm.
And this is, it's funny because we're just continuing a conversation that we would have had 12 months ago.
Yeah.
This Bloodline storyline has just evolved into a different, the same, but different storyline has continued to be fantastic.
Yeah.
A lot of people, wrestling fans, say that the story has gotten stale. They're sick of the Bloodline because a lot of people can't handle long-term storytelling anymore. They say it's going on too long. I'm on a very different page. I'm loving that they've been able to keep this fresh for what, 4 years now almost. Where do you stand on this Bloodline thing? Did you enjoy what they've done this year with the separation and Solo's new Bloodline, the whole deal? Did you enjoy what they did?
Okay, yeah. So it's interesting to think about now in hindsight because a lot of the criticisms that people had of the Bloodline, I'm assuming, were more so during like in the months after WrestleMania when Cody finished his story, Roman was vanquished, and Solo Sikoa had to build a new thing. And now that I talk about it and think about it, I really do. I don't know if you guys are Marvel fans at all,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but I really do sort of like equate it to Endgame
Right.
being, the WrestleMania 40, and the period after Endgame being Marvel's Phase 4, which has seen its own difficulties because
Sure.
at that point you no longer had your top star in well, I guess in this case it would be Roman Reigns. But you would no longer had a Tony Stark, or no longer had a Steve Rogers. And I think that period was somewhat has been somewhat aimless for Marvel. And I thought aimless is the wrong word, but it was lacking in star power.
Yeah.
When you were building something new with the Solo Sikoa and the Tongans, um, I can understand a lot of the frustration from people who just felt like, you know what, this is called the Bloodline, but it's nowhere near as exciting as it was when you had Roman and Jay and Sammy involved. So I just like I probably even, felt similar myself. So in those months, yes. But once the pieces started to come back, Jacob Fatu has been an incredible
Right.
addition to the
Yeah.
to the company itself, and really kind of added that extra spark and level of threat to the group that I think was missing. He's been booked tremendously. When given the ball, he performs tremendously and lives up to sort of like the hype of being this like very special guy in ring. But once you've like, spent enough time with them, um, I once they've started bringing back, all the remaining pieces, Roman, Jay, Jimmy, Sammy, in this lead up to War Games, that's when I think the overall feeling over the bloodline like felt good again. It felt like it was an A storyline again. So we're ending the year off certainly on a high, and I even look at Solo Sikoa's bloodline with a sort of renewed, you
Yeah.
know, importance. Solo Sikoa himself, I think, has really gained a lot, over
Agreed.
the course of the year. In the moments like it, let's also remember the amount of experience that this guy has had to be pushed into this role to be sort of like a successor to Roman Reigns at his experience level is absolutely incredible. And you know what? It's like I wouldn't necessarily say he kind of he had issues. He had trouble living up, I think, to those high demands in the months after WrestleMania. But he's since shown improvement. He's since shown a lot more comfort in playing like a unique, charismatic character. I like his trajectory, but I can at least say like he's ending the year off like in a better place than he was certainly when he started, and even earlier in the year.
Absolutely. Another name that I think has been really crucial to this storyline is Paul Heyman. Um, I remember like a year or two ago when I believe it was probably Chris Van Vliet that asked, what's left to do with the bloodline? And he was like, we're only in the third inning. And I thought he was
Mhm.
crazy. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, oh, sure, Paul, whatever, right? And here we are, and he was so right because I'm more captivated now with the bloodline than I was back then, and I was very captivated by them back then as well. The year Paul Heyman had with the bloodline, the incredible angle in Madison Square Garden, where you are not my tribal chief, to the incredible return bringing CM Punk in. Can you talk a little bit about your views on just the work that Paul Heyman's done to elevate this program?
Yeah, so I mean, with Paul, there's clearly so much he does with the storyline behind the scenes that we're not completely aware of, just as observers of the on-screen product. So I have to imagine you'd have to give him ample credit for the years of building storytelling at this point. Like when it comes down to it, at the end of Paul Heyman's career, mm, like this might be one of the best things he's ever been involved in
Mhm.
creatively, right? I definitely think there are things that I imagined he's responsible for that I can't directly speak to because I don't exactly know, like how much he was responsible for this segment and whatnot. But assuming he kind of has his hands over everything, I think it's been a really, really interesting character study of Roman Reigns. It all revolves around Roman. Even when Roman isn't around, things revolve around him. Um, and we're not just talking about Solo Sikoa. We're not just talking about people directly involved in the bloodline, like a Jey Uso. We're talking about a Drew McIntyre. We're talking about a Seth
Yeah.
Rollins. We're talking about all the Kevin Owens. People who have felt the repercussions of the bloodline and the effects of Roman Reigns gaining new characters for themselves and gaining new storylines for themselves as a result of the idea of Roman Reigns being this like completely like omnipotent, threat that has ruined people's lives throughout throughout the years. I think it's been amazing. Like really, like I would assume that the tribal chief character has much to do with Paul Heyman's input, and actually it might go down as like one of his. Again, I hesitate to say like I hesitate to call it one of his creations because we don't know exactly how much he's involved with, but if we can at least assume that he's got a big part of it, it'll go down as I think one of his greatest creations.
The fact that you mentioned this the spin-offs, because that was my next point I wanted to bring up. We've seen Kevin Owens get this incredible new character that has really elevated him, and it's spun
Big
off to a
time.
great feud with Cody Rhodes. We're seeing Seth Rollins spin out of control. We have CM Punk in the mix now. Drew McIntyre has just entered in, and like you said, it's all because of Roman Reigns. Now, the one thing I love about what Roman Reigns has been doing, though, he hasn't changed a single bit. We have not heard
Mhm.
him apologize to anybody. We have not, we've seen him show respect to people. So I'm going to throw out this little theory here. This is one of my 2025
Mhm.
predictions. All right, this is way out there. What happens if Roman Reigns, decides he's going to start working with the new bloodline? Because it seems like the new bloodline, they're all about acknowledging their tribal chief and respecting their tribal chief. Whereas Roman Reigns' bloodline, they're very independent. We don't want to acknowledge a chief now. And it seems like Roman Reigns' character wants to be acknowledged. He has that ego where he needs to be acknowledged. Do you think that there is any world where we see Roman Reigns turn on his people to be acknowledged to feed that ego?
Interesting. Okay, so you're suggesting like essentially a Roman Reigns re-heel turn,
Yeah, I think this should
like
be way
floating.
down the line though. Like maybe in like the summertime. Like I think there's still a lot of
Yeah.
work to do with this Roman Reigns as a face. But I
I
do see that at some point. He wants that ego fed. He wants to be
Mhm.
acknowledged.
I find it very fascinating. Just the again the idea of sort of diving deeper into Roman Reigns' need for acknowledgement. Roman Reigns' insecurity ultimately is what we're talking about, and his just sort of like his breathing, through getting people to fear him, for instance. And when, Jimmy and Jay and Sammy aren't providing that, is he able to convert the Tongans and Jacob Fatu, for instance? I find it fascinating. Um, I, I, I think there's something there. I think there's something there, and it's possible. Um, I, but maybe I guess I'll just say I think they will do whatever they can to prolong the story as long as possible. Because yeah,
Mm.
like I I think I just don't see an end to this. Because it's arguably the hottest thing still, at this point in the entire company. And whatever can maybe give it a new lease, I think they will at least entertain the idea of. And I'll always imagine that these bloodline members are going to be in each other's orbit like for the next year, certainly, maybe even beyond that. You also have to ask, like, if they weren't, if the new bloodline broke up, what can you see for the Tongans? And Jacob Fatu, I think, will be very good, but like
Mm.
they're much stronger as a unit together. And I have to imagine if the new bloodline are going to stay together, they're going to have some involvement with Roman Reigns. It
You'd
it
think
just
so.
feels natural. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Before we wrap it up on the bloodline, I do want to do want to talk about the Tongans for a minute because I think they're an integral part of everything that we've seen this year. Earlier in the show today, we've discussed they were my choice for tag team of the year. I really think that they played their part perfectly in everything they've done. However, when they first came in, I was excited because I'm a bit of big God fan for years and years. But I think it was really proof that WWE fans, the majority of real WWE fans, don't watch anything but WWE. A lot of these people don't watch Japan. They don't watch Ring of Honor, and they didn't know who Tama Tonga was when he came in. Do you feel that hurt them in the beginning? Do you feel like they've jumped that stride? Do you feel WWE, the actual fans have accepted them in for what they are now?
I definitely think that they're accepted now at this
Yeah,
point. Whether or not maybe like a WWE fans' lack of knowledge of them beforehand hurt them. Um, I wonder. I don't know because I mean it's not like those people would have been familiar with Jacob Fatu, and Jacob Fatu has completely taken off, right?
exactly.
So I
I
think
guess
some
I guess I only feel like that because we're in an era right now where people get used to people now in NXT. People go to
Mhm.
NXT, and even if you don't know them, they could have been wrestling in Japan for 10 years. You've never heard of them before, but they've been on NXT for a year, so now you know who they are. We didn't get that with the Tongans.
Right.
So because it was out of format, I feel like it made people a little slower to grasp at them.
But potentially, you might have a point. I do think that's like something notable about this year in the WWE, where like Paul Levesque has certainly felt that certain talents don't need to go through NXT
Agreed.
in order, like talents that have been on television and are our industry veterans, he will fast track onto the main roster. We saw it,
Mhm.
of course, with the Tonkins. We saw it with Jacob Fatu, Motor City Machine Guns. You know, people
Absolutely.
who just at this point are veterans. They don't need to go through NXT, or they might only have a certain shelf life. You know, they're kind of
Mhm.
several of them are kind of older,
Agreed.
and let's just kind of put them on TV. This was for them the right role. I mean, at the end of the year, I can't imagine mm, a better fit, honestly. You know, if you were looking for a solo Sokoa bloodline with their own sort of like alternate universe Usos,
Yeah,
I mean, the Tongans are really perfect.
100%.
Now, I say that with the caveat of I think Tama has been very good. You know, in
Oh,
fact, like he's been great at like even like adding a little bit of extra personality in there. I
yeah.
think his in-ring has been solid. Tongaloa, unfortunately, for better or worse, has kind of been, I mean, he's like one of the most memed wrestlers
Yes.
this year.
Yeah.
And partially it is because of I mean, I remember just like his years of New Japan and like I thought it was fine, but like I also felt like he was kind of plagued with injuries. Um he had some rough moments, you know, that unfortunately, because they were so early on in the run, kind of established a tone for him as being like the least serious member in all of this. In fact,
Yeah.
the sort of like the clown of, you know, like of the group. And probably unfair. Probably people are a little, being a little too harsh and maybe having too much fun at his expense.
Yeah.
But I'll also say like I don't think he's really shed that persona of for himself yet. Um I mean, I just want to see him develop somewhat of a unique character and a unique personality, even if it means playing to, you know, what people's expectations are.
Right.
But yeah, he doesn't to me feel as big of a threat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand 100% what you're saying. It's just sad for me. I guess I'm a little biased because I have been such a fan of them for so long, and I know how good he can be. I've seen it with my own eyes. One of my favorite matches that I've ever got to be at ringside for was the God versus the Briscoes right here in Toronto back in 2019.
Hmm.
They were on point that night. They were unstoppable. All four of those guys were at the top of their game. I wish people could see that Tongaloa on a regular
Mm.
basis.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, you're right though. That's one, especially on a stage like WWE. Once you've got memed, you're kind of there
Yeah.
for a while.
I'll say like do you think that they've actually pushed well Tongaloa specifically, but just even the Tongans in general as like a threatening top level group?
Not to the degree that they could have been. No.
Yeah,
I
because Jacob Fatu is that guy, but the
yes.
Yes.
Tongans often are like the guys going in before Jacob Fatu
Yeah.
comes in and fixes things. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think Tama really stands out a little bit more because he's kind of embraced the sports entertainment side to the business.
Hmm.
You know, he's doing the funny little yeah yeahs and his little
Hmm.
like and that's really catching on with the crowd and I don't feel like Tama has found that personality wise yet. And they
Tongaloa.
yeah,
Yeah.
Tongaloa has not found that personality wise yet.
Hmm.
I don't know if it's because he just hasn't been given that opportunity or if he just hasn't found his comfort level, maybe in the
Hmm.
ring in the WWE. I think from an in-ring standpoint, I think people are being way too hard on Tongaloa, though. I think that he's been fine. You know, he's made he's had a couple slips. Like it's not the end of the world.
Hmm.
But I don't think that he's found his footing like the rest of the group have yet.
Yeah, agreed.
Uh,
Agreed. I hope to see more speaking roles for the two of them,
mhm.
in the new
Agreed. Yeah,
year. Because
me
right
too.
now, like this entire year, they pretty much just kind of been background characters. Tonga's got his laugh, but we've never really given them actual characterization. I hope to see that change in the new
Yeah,
year.
it would be nice to see maybe Tama Tonga get into a program with somebody like an LA Knight who's very over with the crowd, and to
Hmm.
give him like a 50-50 with LA Knight, I think would give him a good rub. Somebody to that
Hmm.
level, right? And Tongalo is injured right now, so who knows what's going to happen with him when he comes back. But I
Yeah.
think they've got something special with these guys for sure.
Let's also remember they have another brother that's in
That's
the
right.
What's his name?
developmental right now.
Yeah,
That's
that's
right.
right.
That's right.
Hmm.
Before we move on to another topic, Way, I'd love to know what some of your favorite moments in the year of professional wrestling have been through any of the wrestling companies, because I think we've been spoiled this year with some amazing stuff.
Yeah, let me just pause by saying like I haven't done my deep dive into like the year yet, and I'm kind of notorious for having just an awful like short-term and long-term memory. The way I do these shows is like I cram, and then once I've kind of released it into a podcast, I don't think about it so much for the rest of the year because I'm moved on.
I
I'm
get
moving on
that.
to the next show, right? So I don't really like it's tough for me to reflect, and I haven't properly sat down ahead of our own best of content to do. But just off the top of my head, I do think we have to talk about this year about the return of CM Punk
Hmm.
and how
Hmm.
incredibly successful it's been, despite being out injured for half the year. You know,
Exactly. Yeah.
somehow like, and I think he alluded to this like I think at the WWHQ press conference, he he took something that was going to be a real negative and somehow made it um a, almost like a positive
Hmm.
in many ways. Like being able to continue to tell this Drew McIntyre story while being injured and for I think all its faults. I actually really enjoyed all the friendship bracelet stuff. I think every
Yeah, I
segment
liked it as well.
Me
I
too.
think I think every segment that Drew and Punk were involved in was for them like from my memory like very very good, often
Mhm.
just a highlight of the show. So that to me and they really nailed it with their Hell in a Cell match at the end.
Mhm.
So I that's one of the highlight feuds of the year for me. Um
The
Brian Daniels, sorry, go ahead please.
No,
Yeah.
I was just going to top that off with saying that many times over the year, Tyler and I have discussed how we're in a year where the two most coveted items, the two greatest storylines of all year were about a bracelet and a necklace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. The fact that this is how good the storytelling has been this year, is the fact that they can take a broken bracelet and a flowered necklace and make them that intriguing. And it's not
Mhm.
just the storytelling, it's the people in the ring. When you watch CM Punk with that, you believe about that bracelet. You believe that he's going to kill Drew McIntyre because of this bracelet. They made this is some of the like, and I'm a big storyteller guy. This is why I watch professional wrestling. Don't get me wrong, I love the in-ring stuff, but I want to see my storytelling. And there's been no better storytelling this year than not only the Bloodline, but CM Punk and Drew McIntyre. You hit it on the head right there, because I almost forget that he was gone for half the year.
Mhm.
Because the stuff he actually did was that impactful.
So like for all the criticism about like the bracelet or the Ulafala, can we remember ultimately what people are fighting for in professional wrestling?
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's a belt, right?
exactly, right?
I mean, it's not so much about the physical object, but what the physical object represents.
Yeah.
And in the case of a championship, it means you are the best competitor in this organization. In the case of the friendship bracelet, it's representative of his bond with the people that he loves the most and the animal that he loves the most. And
Mhm.
somebody disrespecting it is one of the biggest insults you can give to somebody. The
Hmm.
Ulafala is representative of uh his family. Like it's a family heirloom. I don't know how you can that's even more important than a championship belt. So I don't know
Absolutely
how
it
that could
is.
be how that could be criticized.
Just to piggyback one more quick point on CM Punk, because I heard you mention the name Brian Danielson, and I'd love to have a quick chat about him as well as we
Mhm.
wind down our time here. CM Punk's involvement in the War Games match and this extra layer now with Paul Heyman and the favor. I'm more excited to see CM Punk versus Roman Reigns than I am to see Roman Reigns versus The Rock, than I am to see CM Punk and Seth
I am too.
Rollins. There's just something really magical that I think they've just stumbled into with those two. I think that's the biggest match that the company has right now is those two.
Yeah, yeah, I don't disagree. And it's one that sort of came from out of nowhere. I certainly didn't expect CM Punk to join War Games.
Yeah.
But I think they're at the point now where they have so many well-defined characters and so many great like speakers in the company that you can kind of match them and just the star power alone is going to be incredible. Like CM Punk is really one of those guys, you know, like I think he's doing great work with Rollins right now. So naturally like appearing with him and Roman is big. Punk and Cody is going to be massive. Punk
Hmm.
and Cena is going to be massive. And you just Cena and Cody, like you take any of those names I mentioned, you mix and match all of them, they're all going to be big because everybody right now is hot. Everybody is like a pretty well-defined character. Everybody's like a good speaker.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, like you mentioned, Roman and Punk, like that could be one of the biggest ones. Where would you do, like, when would you peak it for?
Oh, like that's so hard because I think if they do have The Rock available, like you do have to pull the trigger on The Rock and Roman. Like now's the time for that. So that could be something for the summertime with Punk and Roman around the
Mhm.
SummerSlam. They've got big stadiums they need to fill out, and I think that's a huge marquee match that could do it. And it
Hmm.
gives them some time, you know, they're both busy right now. Punk's doing his Seth Rollins stuff. I would be shocked to not see CM Punk in a title picture at WrestleMania this year, maybe with like a Gunter or somebody, or if Gunter's still the champion, right? Who knows if they even go with Cody this early? There's so much for him, but I definitely think that there's this little magical aura between CM Punk and Roman Reigns that I'm very intrigued to see where they go with it.
100%. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then yeah, you mentioned Brian Danielson as well. I'd just love to get your thoughts quickly on him as and then I just want to ask you really quick about the future for next year.
yeah. I was just, for Danielson, I didn't expect this year to, I guess, I don't know, be as I guess active for him as it ended up being. But for me, like I think back to All In as like one of the career highlights for Brian Danielson. I think what I'm more impressed by is just his commitment to exiting this time, especially compared to the first time where he was forced to retire. This really felt like a time where like he was more really at peace, I think,
Yeah.
with the way his career turned out. And I don't know if you often get those sort of experiences from industry veterans who are
Mm.
just kind of like kicking and dragging not to go away. So that to me is like a pretty good memory. Just more maybe on the AEW front, Will Ospreay has been outstanding this year. Every single week he's come in, not just and he hasn't just delivered like great in-ring content, but as a speaker, I've been so incredibly impressed by his ability to cut promos and tell stories even outside of the ring. Um, who could forget Hangman Page burning Swerve's house down? I think those two
Absolutely.
somehow like
Yeah.
managed to match and even exceed the gore and controversy of their last year's match. So yeah, those are maybe some of my highlights.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree. I agree with a lot of your points there for sure. And honorable mention to Tony Storm as well. She had a
Yes.
fantastic year. Her character work is
If
phenomenal.
I had more time, I was just about to mention Tony Storm. Yeah.
Absolutely. So as we wind down here, Way, we really appreciate your time. I'd love to take ahead to this next year that we got coming up. And, you know, it's Royal Rumble season, it's WrestleMania season. What are you
Don't forget, we
hoping?
got something in between there right here in our own backyard.
That's right. We have Elimination Chamber right here in Toronto, which both Mike and I will be attending. Very excited for that. The return to the old Sky Dome for some wrestling, which will be a lot of fun. But what are you hoping to see as we roll into this WrestleMania season, Way?
I'm very curious to see what the impact of Netflix is going to be on their booking overall.
Yeah.
Like whether or not this year is going to be more of a sort of introductory year for what I'm presuming is like their I intent to introduce the current WWE product to a wider base. What that's going to look like? I think what it'll mean is you're going to see some of the most mainstream like what are the biggest mainstream matches that you can get? Who are the biggest mainstream personalities that you could get attached to the product? And that'll be, John Cena, like Logan Paul, Bad Bunny. I imagine will probably make a comeback. But I'm maybe more so interested to see TKO's moves at how they expand the company. Will we get more stadium events? um, more international shows. That's very interesting for me to see as well. So I mean, those are some of my expectations. At the same time, AEW, I think, is going through its own massive transformation. Now having this max deal, I'm curious to see if they will change their booking philosophy and not book large venues and maybe more book to their own scale. I think the
Mhm.
I hate to even say it, but like, they're in need of a certain PR rehabbing. And I feel like they're very aware of it. Tony Khan to me is somebody who's almost hyper aware of what's being said about him and what's being said about his company. So I'm very curious to see what he does to address some of those criticisms.
Absolutely. Well, Wei, this has been fantastic. Time flies every time we talk to you. We'd love to
Yeah.
have you come back on again in the future, of course. I always have a home here with us. Um,
Thank you. It was
a-
fun.
any last things that you'd like to plug that you guys have going on at all with the post wrestling crew?
Well, is this airing before the end of the year?
A portion of this will air before the end of the year, and then I'm going to air the full thing again. Actually, you know what? I'm going to air all of this before right at the New Year mark. Yeah,
Okay.
the very
So
beginning of January.
So first of all, I want to thank you guys for having me on. I want to thank you guys for being gracious with your time and thinking that what I have to say is important enough. But I especially want to thank you for helping me jog some of my memories ahead of like doing our own best of show, which for us this year will be released on the 30th of December. It's me, John Pollock, Braden Harrington, and Davey Portman from Up Next. We get together. It's an annual tradition at this point.
Mhm.
We get together in person and record our show. This time it'll be exclusive on both our Post Wrestling and Poison Rana Patreon. So again, postwrestlingcafe.com if you want to support the show. But if you're just finding out about me for the first time, listen to our free feed. We're on youtube.com/postwrestling, or like I said, search Post Wrestling for on all of your podcast apps. We do post shows every Monday, Wednesday, and even Fridays coming up.
Absolutely. And anything that you see on that post wrestling website when it comes to news related, it is guaranteed. You guys are the most credible source for news that
100%.
I go to find.
Yep.
You guys and John, I think is one of the best journalists in professional wrestling right now. So keep up the great work. All the best success to you, and happy holidays to you and your family.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, Will.
Take care.
Well, let's get to one of the big ones now. It has been a fantastic in-ring year in the world of professional wrestling, and let's talk about our choices for our male wrestler of the year.
Hmm.
There's a lot of candidates that could jump out on
A
this one,
lot. Yeah.
but I'm not gonna sway far away from what I think most people are gonna have, and I'm gonna go with the year of Cody Rhodes.
I was just I figured you were either gonna go with Cody or with Dragon. So I'm not surprised you're going with Cody.
I just think from top to bottom, the year Cody had and the consistency of him performing throughout the whole year really gives him the nod. He won the Royal Rumble at the beginning
Hmm.
of the year, the amazing WrestleMania main event, which I don't know, we'll probably talk about at some point on this
I
show.
think so.
Yeah, and just all the way through his matches with AJ Styles, his stuff with the Bloodline, his current stuff with Kevin Owens, great match with Gunter. I just think from start to finish and from the amount that he performed over the year, Cody Rhodes is my choice.
I was very close to go with excuse me, with Cody myself. I decided to sway a little bit to the left and go on a bit of a different path. I think there's one man who I don't think is getting the quite the credit that he deserves, and I think maybe slightly above Cody in my books. And that man is the man who holds the other major championship in WWE, and that's Gunther.
Yeah, that's a great choice as well. He's
Gunther
had
is
some
my choice for
bangers.
male wrestler of the year. How many other people do you know right now can suffer a loss at WrestleMania and not have it harm his career at all?
Yeah.
Not only like he went to WrestleMania as Intercontinental Champion on the hottest streak that everybody else was on, lost in exceptional fashion to Sami Zayn
And an incredible match as well.
in
That's talked about for match
in a
of the year.
fantastic match, and then went on shortly thereafter to become the world champion
Absolutely.
and has had a great streak as world champion. Yeah, I think Gunther isn't being talked enough and talked about enough right now. I think Cody and Dragon are kind of stealing the thunder away from Gunther, which I think if people really pay attention to what Gunther's done all year, he- he's the man that should be talked about.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue your points at all. I think for me, Dragon definitely could have taken that spot if he was more active throughout the year. He
I
did
had it
have,
narrowed down to three right before coming on, and those were my three: Cody, Dragon, and Gunther.
I think we're on the same page there as well. And yeah, I like your choice, and I think we're onto something with these ones for sure.
For sure.
All right, well, let's get moving on to the next part of our year-end show here. The number one moment of the year is Cody Rhodes finishing his story at WrestleMania. Here to talk about that moment is WWE Hall of Famer DDP Diamond Dallas Page.
What I have found, and I will say it over and over again, and I can tell one story after another, and DDP Yoga is the best example. When I broke my back and they told me my career was over, it was the worst thing to ever happen to me. I just signed a multi-million-dollar 3-year deal. It's going to go away if I can't get back in the ring in 6 months, and they're saying it's over. Well, they were wrong. And 3 months later, I was back on track because of what today is known as DDP Yoga. My point is, it looked like it was the worst thing that ever happened to me. It not only was the best thing that ever happened to me, it was the best thing that happened to hundreds of thousands of people. Like, that's how you really can, like, you think it's the worst thing that ever happened to you, and it turns out to be the best. And so I try to always think about that. You know, when I tore my rotator cuff, there was a point where WCW, Bill Watts was letting me go. So I told him I was leaving beforehand. I wanted my release, even though I'm going to get fired, you know. But Jake was in my life, and Jake, who I met in my club, later would come to the power plant when he came into WCW just for a couple of months to work with Sting and whatever. And then Cowboy came in, and those two did not like each other. So he pulled Jake's contract away, and it was the most money Jake was ever going to make, gone. So Jake at some point was gone. But while he was there, me and Kevin Nash, you know, I freaking carry his bags and freaking get the car, and, you know, all he had to do was drive. And me and Nash got to sit at the foot of Yoda, you know, for about 4 or 5 months. Yeah. And then he left, and then I tore my rotator cuff, and then I'm done. And Jake called me up, and next thing you know, he's living with me, you know. And Kimberly said it was okay for him to stay 2 weeks. He stayed 3 months until he lost that 12-foot Cobra in our house. That's when it's like, he's got to go. But without tearing my rotator cuff, without being let go, I never go on the independent scene. It's kind of like what Cody did, but different, because he already could work, but he couldn't work top guy style because he hadn't worked that yet. He understood the psychology of it, but he hadn't worked that style yet. And he got a chance to do that everywhere he goes because he was the top guy. And look at him today.
Mm-hmm. If I could sneak one more question in about that, then, because I know yes, we're on to the end of our time here, but WrestleMania 40, night 2, Cody finishes the story, one of the greatest main events in WrestleMania history. Can you take me through that night for you? Because you had such a great story about him at the Royal Rumble. I know the love and respect you with the Rhodes family that you have. What was that night like for you to see Cody get that moment?
Going into it, I was there at all his high school championships too. I mean, we go back to where he's 12 years old. So there was a point in time where, you know, it looked like The Rock was going to come in and steal his moment. And I kept telling him what I just told you. You know, sometimes the worst things that look like the worst thing to happen to you can be the best. And he actually did say that in an interview. Dallas always, you know, continued to tell me, no matter what it is, no matter what happened, it's going to be the best thing that happened to you. When he lost the first time at Mania, I said to him, is it really so bad if you lose? like the fans are going to want it for you more than you. I go, it's not a bad thing. He goes, what if we don't get back to it? I go, but what if you do? And with your vision, you will. So I would just be there for him. And I didn't really get a chance to talk to him because when I was going to go in that ring, but that was all company guys. And the family was there and I could have gone in, but I just wanted to give that's his moment and WWE's moment.
Yeah.
And I waited for him to come through the curtain, gave him a big hug. I go, dude, thank you so much. I'm like, hey, I'm leaving for Bora Bora tomorrow. I'll talk to you. And I gave him 3 weeks of not even trying to get a hold of him. When I text him one word, yo. If he texts me back, yo, then I'll text him. When I want to text him.
That's
but we finally got to talk yesterday, and he's living the dream on a different level. And he's like, what can I do for you? Like, that was the first thing out of his mouth. Like, what can I do for you? And I'm like, I don't know. Let's get another Power Cup workout. And then I thought about stuff later, just because we've always looked out for each other, and I was just so happy that I could be there, to watch him go through that journey. And I'll still be there on the high points, but it goes to show the same thing that I lived when I got my first world championship. Because Dusty used to always say, there's only 2 things real in our business. One is that first world championship title, and the other is the Hall of Fame ring. And that moment, having that moment with that championship, the highest one, the biggest one, it's goes to show you work ethic. And nobody knows how hard that cat works. Nobody. I do. And I know how hard he worked when he was sophomore in high school, getting ready to be undefeated his junior year in the ring, on the mat. He had a work ethic that's second to none. And that's why he is where he is. And he is the best representation that you can have in the business. And Roman was amazing. And he will be back. But we still got to see The Rock come back from the movie he's working on right now. And he's playing, I can't remember who the guy is. But
Mark Kerr, I believe.
Yeah, he's a mixed martial artist, and so Rock's going to come back with a whole other arsenal, which is going to be really interesting. And here his 50-year-old ass is out there, again, another guy who has an insane work ethic. I'll tell you this last thing. He put me over so huge. You probably never saw the video, but it was me talking about how what's happening right now with the bloodline and The Rock and Cody and all of that. It reminds me of back in our day. And I put the slap, as Rock called the slap, heard around the world. I put it over huge. And I said, The Rock coming in elevated everything. It elevated everything. Like, he's the biggest star in the world, and he's one of us. And Rock, he didn't just send me a thing about Butterbean. He said, hey, I left you a voice message. And there was, because it runs out after 59 seconds, there was 3 of them.
Amazing.
And I'll keep as long as I live. It was super heartfelt that I understood I understood what was happening. And I understood what he brought to the table. And Jake taught me it years ago. It's like, there's got to be someone who matters. And there were 2 guys that mattered who had a really big face-off, him and Roman. Now we had Rock to that, and then had Seth to that, and it just like boom, 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 boom. It just exploded. It'll go down as the greatest, the greatest wrestling pay-per-view ever, and he's on it. So it'll be really interesting to see when Rock gets back.
Well, there it is, folks. That is a wrap on my list for the best moments from the year 2024. 7 moments, 7 guests. Thank you to all of our guests who took time out over the year to record with us and be a
Hmm.
part of this big year-end show. Now, Mike, what did you think of my list?
Overall, it was fine. It was good. Doesn't exactly resemble what mine would look like, but I mean, I'm sure you could say the same thing about my list last year.
Fair.
So our lists never are going to mirror each other, but I mean, it's definitely not the worst list you could have came up with.
So like, and for me, when I do these lists, I keep everything strictly like from an in-ring product. I stay away from the backstage stuff because otherwise, Vince McMahon's trial would have been number one, obviously,
Yeah,
or the Netflix deal and stuff like that. So
Netflix deal I think would have been huge. Yeah.
yeah, but I keep it to just in-ring, and but the Netflix deal started, well, this is airing this week, so that does not qualify for my list.
Uh,
But
yeah, we'll be talking about that in about 11 months, man.
However, I will say that I had two that were incredibly hard for me to leave off the list.
Hmm.
One of them in particular was the Tony Storm and Mariah May angle. I thought that
Yep.
was a fantastic angle.
Hmm.
And the other one was Mark Briscoe winning the Ring of Honor World title on the anniversary of Jay winning his title. I really, really love that moment. That was a strong contender for me to make the list, but I did choose the New Day over that at the end of the day.
As you should have. You chose correctly, uh, getting the New Day on there. You had me scared there for a bit because you kept saying how, you know, because it happened so late in the year, you weren't gonna choose it. But to me, a moment is a moment. A moment is 2.5 seconds.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter when the moment happened. It doesn't matter if it happened in December or January, or it doesn't matter. As long as it happened in the year of 2004, it has to contend for your list. And that moment is a moment we're going to be talking about for a while. That was huge. That was 10 years in the making.
absolutely.
So that I'm so happy to have seen that be on your list. The Mark Briscoe thing, if it would have made your list, I wouldn't be complaining about it. Don't get me wrong. You know how much I love the Briscoes. You know how much respect I have for both Mark and Jay. And even though I don't keep up or watch the AEW Ring of Honor product, of course I watched that match and I saw that moment and I felt something. 100%. That was a great moment. Does it make my top seven? I don't think so. Maybe a top 10, but definitely not my top seven.
It was on there right till the end. I'm not gonna lie. The just everything from him coming back out to Leonard Skinner and the
Hmm.
anniversary of Jay and the celebration after. I really believe it was the only time that Ring of Honor felt like Ring of Honor again for me
Sure.
since Tony Khan took it over.
Yeah,
To an extent,
to an
obviously,
extent.
of course. But yeah, I think that's the closest it came for me. So I got the nostalgia vibes. I want to
I
talk.
I I do have issue with Tony Storm not being on your list.
Fair. I know you have a big issue, and I want to talk about this one because we've mentioned it briefly off air, but I
Yeah.
refused to talk to you about it till we got on air. But you do not agree with me having Sting's last match, not only in the number 3 spot, which I fought for going back and forth in the number 2 spot as well, but you don't even think it should be on my list. Is this correct?
Not over Tony.
That's crazy to me.
The fact that Tony Storm is on your list and Sting is, yeah, that's not how I would have built my list. To me, at the end of the year, now we're here sitting in January, and like Tony Storm is on everybody's lips still. Nobody remembers that Sting match.
Well, the Sting match happened at the beginning of the year, so I would hope that Tony Storm is still on everybody's lips, considering her
No,
angle is still going on.
no one that as soon as that match was over, we talked about it for 2 or 3 days, and then that was it.
Not,
Um,
not for
it
me. I
it's I think it was extremely over. Number one, the match, I didn't enjoy the match at all. There's not one redeemable quality to that match for me personally.
I was
De
okay.
definitely not my style. But you also put, three to four guys you put in that match are guys that I don't enjoy watching. So
I
this match was not for me.
I do
I am
think I
not
do
a
think the
Young
Young
Bucks fan.
Bucks. I think they were the right choice in hindsight, though, because they
Sure,
they they made Sting look like a million
for
bucks.
for what Sting needed, the way Sting needed to go out. was going to be a match like this. It couldn't be a one-on-one.
No.
So if you're gonna put him in a tag team match going out, you put him with one of the top teams. Sting is a storyteller. Sting's a guy that I enjoy. So what are you going to do? You're going to put him in a match. It doesn't have to be the greatest wrestlers. It's got to be great storytellers. The Nick and Matt thing, changing over and embracing their EVP status and changing their names and all that, that really worked for this storyline. So I'll agree with you 100% that they were the right guys. If you want to put him and Darby against the greatest tag team in AEW, them versus FTR just wouldn't have made sense.
No, it wouldn't work.
Them versus the Hardys wouldn't have made sense. Them versus the Young Bucks made sense.
Mhm.
But that doesn't make me a Young Buck fan. Definitely does not make me a Darby fan. The match itself, it is what it is.
But
I didn't enjoy
not
it.
the match that is making the list. It's the retirement of one of the biggest stars in the last
Yeah,
40 years of
and
wrestling.
I could probably sit down with a pen and paper and think of 10 better ways for him to retire.
I don't
That's
know.
just me.
How would you have Sting have gone out?
Like I said, I'd have to sit down and really think about it. But I think he's deserving of a better retirement than that. Now,
He,
that's just one fan's opinion. If he got what he
Mia the
wanted,
cat does not agree
yeah,
with you. I will
if
have you
he
know.
he deserves at the end of the day, he deserves what he wants. If that's how he wanted to go out, good for him. Fantastic.
I think the whole spectacle of his sons coming out dressed like Stings from the past. The match. Say what you want about it. I'm not a big Darby Allin guy. I didn't like the glass spot, and Dave Penzer agreed with that as well in our list there. But I mean, you sent out one of the greatest superstars of the last however many years. When was that? Almost 40 years. Sting's been one of the best, and you put him out on top. He had the nice celebration with his family,
Mhm.
tag team champion. Very fitting way. I thought it was a great moment of the year, and I really did fight with it to be my number two spot. I
Yeah, well,
just
I definitely don't agree with it being in these top spots. If you would have had that in the 6, 7 spot, we probably wouldn't. I wouldn't even be bothering having this conversation with you right now. I definitely because at least it would be like, okay, I got it. He wants to give Sting the rub for his retirement, but a number 2 spot, that's
The bloodline edged it out. The CM Punk stuff with the bloodline really put that
yes,
over the top for me. And thank you, Wae Ting, for joining us for that. How about I run through a couple of my honorable mentions here? Because I do have a bunch, and you let me know yay or nay if they would have made your
yeah,
list.
go for it.
Dolph Ziggler's TNA debut was at the beginning of the year.
Definitely wouldn't made a list, but it was cool.
Cody Rhodes winning the Royal Rumble. I think that kind of all
That
circled
it
into the
kind of
number
yeah, it
one.
kind of ties into the number 1, but yeah, I get that.
Rhea Ripley at the Elimination Chamber in her
Hmm.
hometown of Australia. I thought that was a nice moment.
Rhea Ripley I could consider her for a few if we were just doing moments. There's a few moments throughout the year where it's like Ripley Ripley came very close to being my woman of the year.
Yeah, absolutely.
She just got nudged out.
I think if she would have stayed healthy for the whole year, I think we would
Yes,
have.
agreed.
Okada is all elite. I've really actually enjoyed Okada in AEW. I never thought I would enjoy a comedy Okada, but he's
No,
making
neither
it
did
work.
I. Yeah,
That spot he did with Ricochet, I don't know if you saw that, where he hit all the ropes and Ricochet was sitting on the ground and
yeah.
then just walked behind him and slapped him in the head. It was great.
I want to hate that so much, but when the slap hit, I had to laugh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this one actually almost made the list as well, and I think if he would have been around a little bit longer, it would have. The Rock reinventing himself as the final boss.
Hmm.
Really enjoyed
I
that.
like that a lot. Yeah.
This was just noteworthy, but not less worthy. John Moxley winning the IWGP Heavyweight Championship earlier in the year.
Cool.
That really cool entrance that Sami Zayn did in Montreal when they
Hmm.
started outside and like
Yep.
went into the crowd.
Loved that.
The Elite attacking Tony Khan. This should be on a list, and they just butchered everything about it after it. Like this was a
Yep.
great angle that they did. The WWE Backlash crowd, they deserve a little nod there. That was a great
Damn right.
pay-per-view.
Yeah.
The reunion of the Brood when Gangrel came out with Edge, not list worthy, but a fun little moment of the
Yeah, it was
year.
fun. Yeah. I think that was more of a hey, WWE didn't have the balls to pull the trigger on this. Let's do it. And I think it would have been that moment would almost be list worthy had it happened at WrestleMania like it was like we expected it to.
Yeah.
The fact that it happened in AEW, I kind of it felt a little watered down, but yeah, it was all right. I liked it.
The debut of the Wyatt Six, very strong
Yes,
segment.
very. Had they followed up and stayed as strong, I think what the reason it wouldn't have made my list is they prolonged, and I love a long build, but this one was a little too long for my liking.
Yeah.
It got to it almost got to the boring level
Yeah.
where it's like, okay, pull the fucking trigger already.
I'm
And
with you.
they didn't pull the trigger quite fast enough. And now since then, they're not it's not a bad angle. It's just it's not what we're talking about every week. The stuff they're doing right now with the Miz and all that, and with
Not my cup of tea.
what Karrion Cross and all that.
Yeah.
I don't hate it,
Yeah.
but it's not water cooler stuff, is it?
I'm not a Wyatt Six guy.
I like it.
The Drew McIntyre at Money in the Bank winning it and then the failed cash in. I really enjoyed that with
That
Punk.
was great. That was great.
Jay Uso winning the IC title. That was a strong contender to make the list as well. That was a great
So
moment.
so for me, this wouldn't be a list worthy thing because of the way it's structured, because it's not a moment, but I would like just to throw out a huge honorable mention to the year of Jey Uso.
100%.
Jey Uso was one of the MVPs of WWE this year.
Absolutely. Best entrance in the business right now.
Oh, what? You're not kidding.
Now, I cheated for this one, but I did give some thought into giving this its own moment. But Nigel McGuinness's return to the ring at Wembley
Hmm.
Stadium,
Okay.
I love that.
Yeah.
Got to give a shout out to our boy Harry Smith for winning the All Japan Pro Wrestling Heavyweight Championship as well.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that he's had to get rid of it already, but it was a big moment when he took it. So
That's it. That's my list of honorable mentions of the
yeah,
year.
I don't think I have anything that you haven't mentioned. You mentioned a lot of the things I was thinking of. But your list, other than the Sting thing, your list is very reminiscent to what mine would be. Maybe the order would be a little bit different, and of
Yeah.
course Tony Storm would be in there.
So you'd
But
get rid of
your
Sting for
list,
Storm.
yeah,
At least they both start with S's.
there you go.
And
And they're both AEW. Like the
yeah.
fact that no, one way or another, I'm having AEW on my list. Uh, that's something right there.
Yeah, I had a pretty even balance of stuff on my list here. You know what? For WWE, I had one, two, three, four. AEW had two moments.
Hmm.
NXT had one with TNA.
Yeah.
Not bad at all. And
Oh,
then
did we mention them in your honorable mentions? The formation of Maple Leaf Pro.
I did not. That's actually a great one to put on there as
That
well.
that again, when it first happened, I remember looking at you going, if they do this right, we could be talking about this on the year-end show.
Yeah.
Now they've only had the one show, so they haven't gotten to that spot where we should be talking about them. But who knows? We might be talking about them on this show next year.
Well, and
We don't know that.
I'll give a little teaser here because you guys just heard a small sample last week of my chat with Josh Alexander, but we do talk about Maple Leaf Pro in our full conversation that will be up in the next couple weeks. You guys are also going to hear our full conversation with Carrie Silken as well in the maybe next week. I think that's what we're putting out, or
I
we
think that's what we discussed. Yeah.
and we got Adam coming on the show in a couple weeks. You guys are going to
Hmm.
do a TNA rundown, and we're also going to play our full interview that we conducted with Jimmy Corderas. That was just a little snippet as well that you heard there. So we got a lot of fun stuff to
A
start
lot of
off the
fun
year.
stuff, and we're gonna try to end the month off with some Royal Rumble talk.
Yes.
We can't finish them. We can't do January without at least one Royal Rumble show. This is my favorite pay-per-view of the year.
Yeah, it's
So
going to
we
be a
got to be
good one.
talking, and it's going to be a big one. Anybody who has seen, as we're recording this, it's a day after the Netflix debut, and anybody who saw John Cena, all I wanted was for him to come out and put his name in the Royal Rumble, and we got that tenfold. That was a great promo. I got everything I wanted out of that.
Well, that is a conversation to be had when we start the year 2025. But this year, we are putting a bow on the end of 2024. Thank you, everybody, for all your support over the last year. It has been our biggest year yet, and we continue to try to give you the best that we can every year. And let's hope we can continue to grow this little adventure that we're on. That's turning into not a not so little adventure anymore. It's like a slightly above average adventure that we're on now. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Are we talking about penises or vodka? I don't know. They both
Well,
start with P. I don't know.
even though we're technically already in 2025, let's say goodbye to 2024 in the best way possible. And that's by telling 2024, you've been counted out.
Cheers.